Now, there are 11 county finals down for decision across the country this weekend, and now we're going to look forward to 3 of the football deciders, which are due to be played on Sunday. In a few minutes' time, we'll be looking ahead to the football deciders in both Kildare and Donegal. But we start with Laois, where there's a parish battle. The reigning champions, Port Arlington, who are going for their 3rd in a row and their 15th if they were to lift the ball with Keith at the weekend, go up against O'Dempsey's, who've got 2 titles so far at MW Hire O'Moore Park. On commentary for Midlands 103 will be former Laois captain John O'Loughlin, who's here with us. John, how are you getting on?
Oh, you will? Yeah, I'm great, thanks. How's all with you?
All good. This is a very interesting final. They played as a parish battle back in 1963, where O'Dempsey's come out on top. They haven't met in a final since. So there's a couple of generations which have passed by without these two neighbours going up against each other. And I can only imagine what the rivalry's probably been like around Port Arlington over the last week or so.
Yeah, I'd say it's been pretty intense, Will, and I'd imagine it'll be very intense at 4 o'clock on Sunday. And I just read there a while ago that all 30 players who are starting will have gone to the same secondary school, which I think is a crazy stat. So that just shows you how tightly knit these communities are, you know, how intertwined they are. So, yeah, look, I'm really looking forward to it, I must say. I think it's all the ingredients to be a really good game of football, and may the best team win. Yeah,
Close East have gone a real production line. I think both sides of the county border for Offaly and Laois, but these lads would have all went to school together, all know each other, probably from development panels too. Des Cooney, the referee, was even saying that last weekend. He would have formerly managed Port Arlington. He says he knows both sets of players by name because he would have refereed all of them over the last few years as well. And look, you've played against these teams with Rosenallis in recent times in the Laois Championship, and like this year, John, there wasn't a whole lot between them. It was a very late point from Jake Foster. They got the win for Port Arlington when they met in round 2, but maybe that shows that O'Dempsey's can run this Port team quite close.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, O'Dempsey's were missing arguably their best player that night, and I would say arguably the best player in Laois at the minute, Mark Barry. And as you said, Jake Foster got a last-minute score to win the match. Now, listen, that wasn't the business end of the championship, so it's a different ballpark on Sunday. You know, this is a real championship. Obviously, it's the final, but you know, there's no second chances. So it'll be very close. I think O'Dempsey's, you know, they've been building with Owen Kearns over the last couple of years. They have great kind of youth in the team with, you know, sporadic experience as well. So they will really fancy their chances. I don't think they'll be going into this match thinking we might have a chance. I would imagine they're going into this match expecting fully to win the match, as a Port Arlington, who are going for 3 in a row and really dug it out against Port Laois. You know, and credit to Port Arlington for getting this far, and they probably haven't shown the form of the last 2 years, but it's a sign of a good team, you know, when you're winning matches and you're not playing to your potential. So, yeah, look, it's, as I said, it's the ingredients to be a really good match, and I'm looking forward to a few of the matchups. I really can't wait to see who picks up Mark Barry, because he could be the winning and losing of the match.
You mentioned Port Arlington just getting over the line against Port Laois in that Battle of the Ports a couple of weeks ago, and so much of that comes down to the save that Scott Osborne makes late in the game. I mean, it went viral, the video, because of the way he scrambled across to make the save, but they had him to thank. I mean, for the best part, they were under the cosh for quite a bit of that game.
Oh, the whole game, well, really, and Port Laois were excellent. You know, and Port Laois, they got a serious trimming off Port in the final last year, and you know, I know a few of the Port Laois boys fairly well, and they're hurting, you know, as anyone would be when you get a bad beating. So they were gunning for Port this year, and they were excellent. You know, they had a great game plan, and they really, really looked for large stages. They were going to win the match. But again, credit to Port Arlington. They dug it out. Paddy O'Sullivan got a good point near the end. And as you said there at the start, you know, a point-blank save, literally point-blank save from Scott Osborne, from Kieran Lillis. He got a strong fist on it. So they really do have him to thank. But that's what goalkeepers are there for. And, you know, that's what the big players are there for, making big plays in important stages of games. And he absolutely did that.
The O'Dempsey's captain, Matthew Hatch Finlay, who explained during the week he got his nickname because he was a Bob the Builder fan when he was a kid, and he pointed an ad on TV, and that's how he became the Hatch. I'm always intrigued by Laois nicknames. It seems to be the home of GA nicknames for the best part. But on the field this year, he's been very impressive. Top scorer in the championship, 8 points against Courtwood in the semi-final. It's obvious, but he's key to their chances if O'Dempsey's are going to win the cup this weekend.
Oh, absolutely. And he's been their key player since 2018. You know, he came on the scene and they were in the final that year, and he's followed on from that form and brought that form on with him. And, you know, he is their talisman up front. You know, I'd say after Mark Barry, he's their most important player. And he nails his frees, which is really, really important. You know, I think a good free taker can carry a team in both hurling and football. And he does get them. Like, he got 8 points the last day, but, you know, he's going to face his biggest test on Sunday. So he will have to come up with the goods, I will imagine, for Portarlington to get their hands on the trophy.
There's a little bit of a mirror to last weekend too. Clogh-Ballacalla won the championship in Laois for a third year in a row with Declan Laffin, who's now going off to work with Tipperary next year, and unsure whether he's going to be back in with Clogh-Ballacalla again. Similar circumstance with Portarlington, they're going for 3 in a row. It would seem that Martin Murphy is going to be part of Liam Kern's backroom team with Offaly. But just to give maybe people an insight about Martin, who's now, at least from his perspective, trying to do 3 in a row at Portarlington, but also won championships. Like, we remember the 10 in a row being stopped with his Stradbally team as well. There's few managers that have been more successful in the Laois championship than him.
Incredible record. You know, he won a championship with Stradbally back in 2005. And then Portlaoise were going for 10 in a row, as you said, in 2016. And Jody Dillon got that incredible last minute goal. So, you know, he came back to Stradbally, won his second championship with them, with a new generation of players, and now he's going for 3 in a row county championships with Port, and Port hadn't won a championship since 2001 before he took over. So, you know, incredible club record, and, you know, he will be hoping for a fairy tale ending like Declan Laffin got with Clogh-Ballacalla at the weekend. Now, he is to go. I don't know. But you'd imagine if he's going in as a selector within the county team, he will be moving on. But look, he'll be wanting the same ending as Declan Laffin, and Portarlington will be wanting the same script on Sunday as Clogh-Ballacalla.
I call the script then. Who's going to win this battle of Neighbours then?
I'm going to go for Portarlington. I just think that they're coming to the boil at the right time, and I think that they've got this far without really performing. I think there's a big game in them, so I'm just going to go with Portarlington, but I'm expecting a great game. And look, may the best team win. I can't wait to see a good game of football. So listen, we'll see how it goes on Sunday.
Yeah, 4 p.m. throw-in at MW Hire, O'Moore Park in Portlaoise. It's O'Dempsey's up against the reigning champions Portarlington, and John will be on commentary for Midlands 103. John, great to catch up with you as always. Thanks a million.
All the best, Will. See you later.
Now, Ballybuffet will play host to the Donegal Senior Football Final. St Unions on 15, going for their 16th, up against Naomh Conaill, who've got the 5. The game is at 4:30 on Sunday. And this is a fairly interesting rivalry. It's the 6th time they'll have met in the final since 2005. On commentary for Highland at the weekend is going to be Brendan Kilcoyne, who is a 2-time Donegal Championship winner as a player with St Unions, also 1 time as manager of the club, but also won 2 titles in his native Sligo with Tubbercurry as well. And he's going to be breaking down the game for the listeners on Highland Radio. Brendan, good afternoon to you. How are you getting on?
I'm very good, Will. Good afternoon to you too.
Tell me with this first. How's the Sligo man end up in so enriched and entrenched in Donegal football?
Well, I suppose I moved up here in 96. I worked with Ulster Bank and moved up here in 96. I transferred to St. Unions in 97. And I suppose I was playing with Tubbercurry and Sligo at the time, and I just decided I'd try. I was kind of reaching my late 20s. So I said I'd try something different, and was lucky enough to be involved in a few championship winning teams, Will. And I suppose from there on, one thing led to another, and here I am now. I've kind of been involved with Donegal senior, under 21 and minor teams in the past too. So, yeah, enjoyable.
An adopted son now at this stage. This is Glenties against Letterkenny essentially. And the last few years, these two teams have kind of been ending little runs for each other as well. We look back to late last year, you know, St Unions stopped Naomh Conaill when they're on a run. They potentially could have won 3 in a row. And now it's kind of swapped back the other way, where Naomh Conaill are going to try and stop St Unions. So this is an interesting little rivalry with lots of recent clashes between the teams in the business end of championship.
Yeah, you know, I think this is their 6th championship meeting since, you know, Naomh Conaill Glenties became a force in around 2005. Jim McGuinness would have been involved in management at that time, and there's been some, you know, really, really big clashes with these two teams down through the years, so that as well. And, you know, there's never too much between it. They're always very keenly contested and always very cagey. And obviously there's always a big tactical element to these games too. And, you know, if you go back to even last year, you know, Naomh Conaill were going in as really hot favourites, as you say, going for 3 in a row. And, Union's turned up on the day and just blew them away. So that there's a really, really keen rivalry between the two teams. Now, obviously, a lot of the personnel have changed. Naomh Conaill still have players, that would have played back in 2005. Brendan McDyer would have played back then. And, Liam McClune was involved a couple of years later. Anthony Thompson, of course. And, the players that have been around a fair bit, where the Unions team is pretty, it's a really young team, particularly their top 8. You're looking at 22 years old and younger for the top 8, I would think. So, it's going to be another Titanic final. So they didn't, and obviously, as you would expect, so they're going to be gunning for revenge on Sunday.
It makes for a very interesting story, doesn't it, on the face, where you've got an experienced team up a pretty youthful team. And even in my own county in Offaly, a couple of weeks ago, we'd rowed against Tullamore, which is almost exactly the same, where Road had, I think, 10 players who were over the age of 30 at the start of the game, and Tullamore had a very youthful side. And in the end, the old dogs were able to use that experience to win. So even if you are coming in with a youthful side, it's no guarantee that the seasoned team won't come out on top here.
Oh, absolutely not. And there's no guarantee here with either of these two teams, that the rivalry is so keen. And what invariably has happened over a lot of the years is that the underdogs have upset the favourites because they're coming in undercover somewhat. But, there's a huge knowledge, both Rory Kavanagh, the St. Junan's manager, and Martin Regan, the Naomh Conaill manager, they know these teams inside out. So they do, from both play and managing them over the last number of years. And it's going to be hugely keenly contested. I suppose, you look at, there's a couple of big factors here. And, Sean Patton, Donegal goalkeeper, is in the nets for St. Junan's. And, his kickouts have been phenomenal. In the semi-final, he kicked a couple of bombs that just totally took out the Kildare press and found forwards up on their own, the attack in 65. So that's going to be a huge feature, so it is. And on the other hand, last year, Union's got an awful lot of joy pressing up on Stephen McGrath's kick out. So them two areas are going to be crucial. So they are. How are the different teams going to, going to go at that? And that's going to tell a lot of the story come Sunday.
Yeah, it's always intriguing when teams know each other so well. They can almost kind of double guess what the tactics are going to be, and maybe double guess the solutions that they might put in place to try and get round to that press as well. I think on the face of it, this is probably going to be a pretty cagey and quite interesting game.
Yeah, they normally are very cagey, and I would imagine particularly to start off, and Naomh Conaill will not want to give St. Junan's the run that they got at them early in the game last year. Because Unions have pace and they've scoring forwards. There's 3 O'Donnell brothers playing for St. Junan's, who incidentally their father is actually from Glenties. So they're obviously living in Letterkenny. Niall and Shane, who both played for Donegal, and Connor, who was involved in the squad last year too, the Donegal squad last year. So the Unions have the artillery up front to hurt them. But that said, you go through this Naomh Conaill team and the wealth of experience they have at the back, and the big guy Charlie McGuinness playing on the edge of the square, along with Leo McClune from the Donegal team that won the All-Ireland 2012, and they're 2 big target men inside. And if there's a susceptible shortcoming in this St. Junan's team, high ball into the square seems to cause them trouble over the last couple of years. So I'm sure Naomh Conaill will be pinpointing that. But if Mike Tyson says we all have a plan, we get punched in the face, and these tactical plans can be blown really quick. If you're setting up defensively, another team gets a few scores and you have to come out, and that changes the course of the game. Well,
no, for sure. Do we take Naomh Conaill as the best team in Donegal over the last decade or so? Given their record, particularly over the last 6 years of getting to county finals?
Yeah, well, I think over the last 5 or 6 years, you'd have to, this is their 6th final in the row. As you said, they were going for 3 in a row last year. And they beat this St. Junan's team in 2 semi-finals, for 2 of them county final victories too. So it's that they've been always there, and their ability to come back every year and win, and get through the county final is massive. Whereas Unions had been, they hadn't been won a county final since I think 2014 up to last year, but they have come now with a really young team. But St. Junan's are going let's take it that this rivalry started in 2005. I think Unions are going for maybe their 7th title, and Naomh Conaill are going for their 6th title. So that shows you, that they've been the 2 dominant forces over that 15, 17 year period. Glen Swilly won a few, and Kildare won a couple and Kildare won one. And they're your big four in Donegal. They're the four that at the start of the year you're saying, you know, the winner is going to come from that four. You can nearly definitively say that because, you know, they've dominated for so long, and particularly these two that are facing off on Sunday will.
Yeah, it's very tight between the meetings between them. 2005, Union's ahead at the moment 3-2 on the head-to-head when it comes to finals. So there's been very little between them historically, even though over that last kind of 17-year period. Looking through all of the local paper previews that I could get my hands on in Donegal, it seems both management teams are saying they're in pretty good shape for this weekend. There's one injury on each side. I think Peter McAniff is a bit of a doubt. He's got a hand issue, and potentially Ethan O'Donnell might be missing on the other side. But aside from that, they're pretty much at full strength, it seems.
Pretty much at full strength, yeah. And, you know, both players would be big losses to their respective teams. Particularly Ethan O'Donnell, you know, he's probably been Naomh Connor's most consistent performer throughout the championship this year, coming from wing back, posing a huge attacking threat from that area, Will. And, you know, he'd be a massive loss to them if he's not available. So obviously you want to see all players available. Naomh Conor did lose two players just before the throw-in the semi-final, the experienced Liam McClune and Johnny O'Malley, but both are said to be okay now going into the final. And, you know, St. Junan's Darren Mulgrew had been missing for the quarter final with a hand injury, but he's back and he had a superb game in the semi-final against Kildare last week. So both teams will be at or near at full strength, and that's going to only go to add to the occasion too.
Yeah, both managements were very much insisting the other team are really good. We're going to be at our best to win. So I think that's reflective of probably every preview across the country. 4:30 Ballybuffet on Sunday. It is St. Eunan's against Naomh Conor, and Brendan's going to be in commentary with Highland Radio. How are you calling it, Brendan? Who do you think is going to win?
It's really difficult. Like, you know, it's funny, there was a poll in one of the local papers and I think 12 people were polled and 10 of them kind of plugged for St. Eunan's. Now that's proved to be a kiss of death in the past in certain finals where there's been such an overwhelming favourite and it's kind of gone against the grain, and 2005 would be one example of that. Personally, I think, you know, St. Eunan's, and as an ex-St. Eunan's player and manager, I would love to see them win, but I think it's going to be really tough. I have huge respect for this Naomh Conor team and their ability to come back, as we said, every year and, you know, to take belts and to get on. They're a really tough, hardened team. But I think, you know, St. Eunan's should just shade it, but it'd be very marginal, maybe after extra time or a replay.
Should be an excellent final. Highland Radio, of course, carrying radio commentary from 4:30. It's also on TG Carr on the telly as well. Brendan, thanks a million for looking forward to the final with us.
Okay, thank you all.
Now it is time for us to have a look ahead to the Kildare Senior Football Final, which will pit Naas against Callaghan at Newbridge 3:30 on Sunday afternoon. Naas trying to win title number 10, the defending champions, up against a Callaghan team who are one of the major kingpins of Kildare football with 17 titles, but haven't won the Dermot Burke since 1997. To look forward to this, we're joined by KFM commentator Ger McNally. Ger, how are you getting on?
Good, Will. Thanks for having me on.
This sets up very interesting, doesn't it? Naas, who obviously came to the fore and had their run at Croke Park last year in the Leinster Championship, back to try and defend their title against a Callaghan team, as I mentioned in the outro, who've had to go a long time to try and lift the cup again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a novel pairing, considering that Kildare GAA have been pretty much dominated by the two Moorfield clubs, Moorfield and Sarsfield. They have been by far the dominating teams over the last 2 decades, really, in Kildare football. So to have a final without either one of those is a very rare thing. I think it's only the fourth time this century. It's only the second year since the mid-90s that at least one of those wasn't in the Kildare semi-final. So there has been a bit of a sea change in Kildare GAA. But I think anybody who'd been looking at the underage setup in Kildare over the last 5 or 6 years in terms of minor football, and even going back further to coming to Munschool finals 10, 12 years ago, to see these two teams in a final probably isn't a massive surprise, because they have been dominating at underage level and they have been coming teams. Naas, as you said, made it there last year in great style and ended a long drought, and now Callaghan are back in the final for the first time since 1998, and they have a very talented young side, and it really is set up for a good game. Two very quick athletic sides coming face to face.
I did wonder if that was an outlier, the fact that the teams, in Moorfield's case particularly, haven't been Leinster champions that recently to not be involved in the final. I was wondering if this was a one-off kind of year where themselves and Sarsfields don't get to a semi-final. But what you've said there, not to get away from the two teams who are in the final, it seems maybe that they've now come to the fore and the two other clubs might be playing catch-up now.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because we spoke to Tom Cribben after his team's semi-final win, and he was actually the manager of Callaghan, player manager, when they last reached the final back in '98, and he was a big part of their successful teams through that era. And he was very blunt about his own club. He said that they were so successful at senior level through the 90s that they took their eye off the ball at underage level. I just wonder, has something similar happened now? Particularly Moorfield, they seem to be on a bit of a downward slope. They obviously lost the two O'Connor brothers, Jack's sons, Keane, and particularly Aina. They were huge players for them for the last few years. They've gone back to Kerry. They're massive losses and very, very hard to replace. But it does feel as if they've just come to an end of their cycle. Sarsfield's maybe a little bit different. They still seem fairly well set. They just came up against Naas in the quarterfinals this year. Had the draw panned out a little bit differently. Sarsfield maybe would have been still one of the contenders this season. But Moorfield definitely, they've dropped away a little bit. And Naas and Crane are setting the pace now.
It's remarkable when you think about Clubman, when you mentioned Tom Criven there. As you said, he was still playing while coaching back in 97. I'm sure he didn't think when he came off the field in 98 that they would have to wait until now to get back potentially to the top of the mountain again.
Yeah, absolutely. It is kind of amazing the way the cycle goes. After that 98 final, which is a famous final down here in Kildare, because obviously Kildare were very successful that summer under Micko, and that county final wasn't played until about a couple of weeks before Christmas Day, and the weather conditions were absolutely horrendous. Callaghan only scored 4 points in that match when they were beaten by Round Towers, but they were in semi-finals then in 99, 2000 and 2001. They have to wait then for another semi-final until 2007. And this is their first year back then in the senior semi-final even, and they're a minor final since 2007. They really did go through some low times, and particularly in 2018, they played in a relegation final against Leixlip. They were a point down in injury time, and for all the world looked a beaten team then until they scored 2 late points and turned that around, and it was Leixlip were relegated, and they are still in the intermediate ranks here in Kildare trying to get back up since. So that was a real sliding door moment for Callaghan, because since then they've had a real influx of youth into their side and gone from strength to strength.
Yeah, how quickly things turn. We spoke to Eamon Callaghan after his spectacular exploits, I think we'll call them, at Croke Park, and he was talking about, you know, how excited he was and much he was relishing that. It kind of with Kildare, you get used to those big inter-county days, but then when he's back with his club with Naas last year, he said he was relishing the fact that they got back to play a couple of games at GA headquarters, and he enjoyed kicking points and kicking pressure frees. Even at his advancing years, I think as he's about to turn 40, or maybe recently turned 40, he's still a pretty key player for the defending champions here.
He is. I think he's at 40 just in early November, so yeah, he's approaching that big landmark in his life. But he's an absolute remarkable player, a remarkable character. He's like somebody like Ronan Sweeney down here in Kildare, who I kind of liken him to, and that he had a very distinguished inter-county career. But then when he's gone back to his club, rather than kind of winding down the time, he seems to have gone to another level altogether. And this season in particular, the quarter-final victory that I mentioned against Sarsfields, that was a game that Naas found themselves in a real mess, really. They were 6 points down at the half-time break, albeit playing into the wind in the first half. But then they had key forward Dara Kerwin sent off in the 38th minute for a second yellow card, and lost midfielder Alex Byrne then 3 or 4 minutes later to a black card. So although they had got a couple of points back early in the second half and still 15v15, they were still 2 or 3 points down with 13 men on the field. And I think Eamon Callaghan just took over then after that, and his second half performance in that match in his long distinguished career, and I've seen a lot of games that he's played for Kildare and Naas through the years, and I think that was one of his most exceptional performances ever. He really did play a huge part in dragging his team over the line there, and Naas seemed to have added a string to their bow this year, because they would have been kind of known as a really, I suppose, nice team to watch, attractive side, playing a really nice brand of football. But this year they've shown they're able to dog out victories as well. And they have Joe Murphy there as the manager now, an Éire Oak club man, and well known in Éire Oak circles and Carlow GAA as well. And he seems to have added a real bit of steel to them as well now, as well as all the other positives they have going for them.
Yeah, and things are going remarkably well for Naas as a club currently on both sides, both for the big ball and for the small ball. Is there that possibility now they're going to become the powerhouse in both codes in Kildare here?
Yeah, it might even have already happened. The hurlers won their 4th successive senior title there a couple of weeks ago, and 2 of the players involved in that team, Brian Byrne and James Burke, were also hugely influential players for the footballers as well. We're in the midst of a nice takeover here in Kildare. I think they're really setting a high standard for the rest of the teams to follow, particularly on the hurling side. That they seem well ahead of everybody else in Kildare, although a young Maynooth side put up a decent showing against them in the county final. But yeah, if they win back-to-back football titles here as well, it'll be back-to-back hurling and football doubles as well. They have their minor footballers in the final as well on Sunday too, before the main game as well. So they have a huge amount of numbers there and a strength in numbers. And the hurlers had to wait a long time for the breakthrough to get that first of the 4 in a row. And once they kind of got that albatross off their back there from around their necks after they lost a couple of county finals, once they got over the line on county final day, they've gone to the 4 in a row. They won the All-Ireland Intermediate hurling title last year. They play in the Leinster Senior Championship this year. And the footballers as well, on the football side of things, they had to wait over 30 years up to last year for their first title in such a long time. And again, the feeling is that, having got that first one under the belt, that they could be set now for a few years of dominance.
Yeah, I've got a feeling, given that they're playing first time Offaly champion Shinrone in the first round in Leinster, they might really fancy getting a senior win onto their notch when it comes to Leinster as well, given everything they've done, as you mentioned, winning the All-Ireland Intermediate last year. What's your take on this weekend then? Who do you fancy?
It should be a very interesting game because both sides played against Athy and Selbridge respectively in the semi-finals. There were two very well organised defences, and I suppose the feeling that of Naas and Callaghan will be they're both more inclined to attack, and it should lead to a pretty open game. Although I think Naas, they will be cute, I'm sure, because they won't want to leave themselves too open because Callaghan have a lot of scoring threats. But it would appear that have the potential to be a high-scoring game. The weather conditions, the weather forecast doesn't look great, so that maybe will put a bit of a dampener, quite literally, on things on Sunday afternoon. But if the weather stays good, we could be set for a real treat. They both sides have a huge amount of young athletic players who can cover the grounds. You would, I suppose, have to fancy Naas, the fact that they were there last year. They have that a bit of experience as well of playing through the Leinster Senior Championship, and they've plenty of scorers themselves. Like Darragh Kerwin was kept fairly quiet by Selbridge, and Mick O'Grady, who's the Kildare fullback senior team, he was marking him and did a really good job on him. And yet Kerwin got 2 swings of his boot at the bottom of the last 15 minutes and scored 2 crucial goals. So they do have that kind of threat, Naas, and they are capable of pretty much scoring out of nowhere because they really do hit you on the break if they force turnovers in the centre of the field, and one straight pass can change the whole flow of a game, momentum in a game. So yeah, you'd probably have to favour Naas given they've been there and done that. But Callaghan, on the other hand, they do have really good scoring threats in Brian McLaughlin and Shane O'Sullivan. They're strong defensively. Robbie Phillips has had a fantastic year at fullback. Keane Burke in goal has been terrific as well. Tyg Montgomery is another one raiding forward. But I suppose Tyg Montgomery and Paddy McDermott on the opposite sides. Naas man Paddy McDermott, there are two players to sum up the side really. They're two quick young players who are very good ball carriers, can cover a huge amount of ground, and it will be kind of almost feel like a basketball match sometimes, I feel, in terms of just being end to end, and it should be a very entertaining game.
Yeah, fingers crossed. 3:30 St Colins Park in Newbridge this coming Sunday. That is Naas against Callaghan in the Kildare Senior Football Final, and Ger will be calling the action on KFM. Ger, great to catch up with you as always.
Thanks indeed, Will. Lovely to be on.